So, have you taken a minute to think about what it is that you value and how those values may play a role in driving how it is you shop, how it is you think about your career, and maybe how it is you make choices? So, welcome to This Life Reconsidered, where the goal is to look at the glass half full. My name is Janina. So, this idea sort of hit me as I was reflecting on some exercises from a virtual program that my cousin asked me to join her on. And it was specific to financial freedom, and she wanted an activity partner to kind of stay motivated. And even though I didn't really join it kind of like for myself per se, but to kind of like support her, the warm-up exercises actually got me thinking as they had you kind of, and it wasn't really complicated. And I'll link to the program below if you're interested in that stuff. But it was the questions that they asked you to kind of think about what financial freedom would look like for you. And there were just kind of three key buckets. The first was, and I wrote them down. The first is, think about, if you could kind of have, the things that you truly, truly wanted or truly kind of valued. And it could be anything, a sunshine, the ability to always be able to kind of have money in the bank or, whatever those kind of key tangible ideas are or intangible, note those down. That was the first. And then the two other things that they ask you to think about is to think about the biggest accomplishments that you have been very, very, very proud of. And the list doesn't have to be long. The idea is that should be kind of manageable, but just to jot that down. And then the third that they asked you to think about was kind of the things that were, I guess, a little bit more things that just made you really uncomfortable or things that you just really, really, really hate. And based on thinking on these key three things, and I thought it was really, really compelling for that to lead into a financial program. But it was also really useful to think about those key things into kind of how it is that you choose to make decisions. For my personal one, and I won't go into my full list because that's very, very personal to myself, all of it, I will call out one or two key things that I noticed were trends from those three buckets for me. It was really, really important for me to have a sense of true stability. And then it was also really, really, really important to kind of have a sense of just kind of knowing that I had the ability to kind of creating means for myself. I didn't necessarily need to be free of all of the problems in my life, which was interesting, at least for me personally. But I found that it was really, really important for me to know that if things were going to be really tough for me, that I had a way, like especially financially, that I had a way to think through how to remedy that for me, such as the flexibility to kind of create a side hustle or to have a really strong resume or always have a big, strong professional network that I can tap into. I just needed to know that there were avenues and that was really important to me. And interestingly, another piece that was on my list was something about not only being judged unfairly, but also a sense of embracing your personal style. The reason I called these out for this particular video was because I wanted to kind of figure out how this tied to some of the choices that I feel like that I've started to allow myself to make in the last few years of my life. So, I think as in a previous video I just put up, thinking about my ability to start enjoying luxury, and even thinking about the online community that people have started to drop off of from that luxury space, I realized that being able to kind of be comfortable in my own style, being very, very safe and I don't want to say safe, but being comfortable with the idea of creating means for myself, those kinds of key ideas, and then also being judged unfairly and making sure people can kind of get a general sense of of who I could be when seeing me felt like a value. And maybe that sounds a little superficial, but I pulled that value through because I have also found that it is just as easy without having a lot of information to make decisions on people. And I felt like the only way that I can provide information by people is by the kind of orbit that I keep and create for myself, right? Now, that's not to say that those judgments are all always accurate, but for me, whatever I could control about my potential and ability, I wanted to make sure I was able to do that. I thought it was interesting that that was something that was very, very important to me. Now it did. Now I will say that that's not one of the drivers. That wasn't the top one. But I noted that because I've spent a lot of time having to prove myself in many different environments, in corporate environments, in social circles, and in circles in which I am one of few, that's a very personal value to me. Now, so not everyone may have that same struggle. So I say all that to say that I started to realize, and I wanted to kind of think about how this translated or connected to my personal kind of desires to in this current space, why I like nice things, or why I want the ability to be able to give myself access to those things or things like that. It doesn't mean that those are the only things I value, but I realize that as I reflect on my journey to kind of where I've come to, that it is also very important for me to have as many ownable, tangible things for myself. So with that recognition, I do find myself very, very appreciative of how you can use this kind of information to think about how that translates to the choices that you make. So knowing that I am very, very personally passionate about personal style, I will probably pay much more attention to investing in the right pieces that reflect that part of my identity. Or knowing that having very, very strong networks and professional networks and those kinds of avenues is very important to me. I will spend a lot of time pushing myself professionally. So people always have a sense of understanding not only who it is that I am, but also that I am also very capable and am a very hard worker, you know? So with that all kind of processed, I wanted to ask those key questions because I thought that they were really, really good questions. And again, once I can get my hands on that program, I will include it below. But I thought that those questions were meaningful enough that I wanted to throw that out to you to think about how those questions can also play into how you think about maybe just the kind of things that we pursue in the quest of fulfilling what is personally important to us. So if you know what accomplishments matter to you the most, and if you know what kind of things you aspire to have in your universe, and what items and what things make you really, really, really angry, how do you take knowing those pieces of information and then use that into an ability to make very, very conscious choices? Maybe even to a degree, how it is you spend money or how you choose to let people in your life. So the thought of having very clear understandings of some areas can really play a really strong role in how it is you choose to embrace some kind of behaviors. Now, these are not the only questions that you would ask yourselves, but I think that having these higher purpose questions front and center is really, really powerful, because then you can truly take that time to start thinking about very, very deliberate choices based on your value code, and then acting in an area, in a behavior that is personally connected to your personal code. This is not meant to be prescriptive and a blanket observation. It was just something that was really hitting on me, and something that just felt really appropriate. And it didn't feel like you needed to ask those questions just about your financials. It felt like that those questions had a lot of broader applicability. So I encourage you to think about those questions. I have some additional thoughts on this topic and some other content that I'm working to shape on the power of making decisions and things like that. But I did wanted to throw these questions on the table for you to kind of consider, because I thought that they had much broader applicability, especially when you think about the kind of things that we should just be much more intentional about. So I would love to know what kind of questions you also ask yourself. What other processes you factor into the master roadmap for you, because we all have different type of things that we take into consideration and different kind of processes that we adhere to on how we develop our own value systems. This is just something that is sticking with me, and interestingly, I keep the answers that I wrote to all those questions on my phone when I feel like I'm gonna kind of like have a mind shift for a second. So I look forward to hearing your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one.